I'll be honest, my compost pile used to be one of my biggest gardening frustrations. I did everything the book said: kitchen scraps, shredded leaves, grass clippings, a little water, and a good turn every now and then. But instead of rich, dark compost, I had a cold, soggy pile that smelled sour and took forever to break down. At times it felt like I was just collecting garbage behind the shed instead of making soil gold. Then, out of desperation, I tried pouring one simple mixture onto my pile. What happened next changed everything, not just my composting but my whole garden. The first sign something was different was the heat. Within 2 days, my pile, which had been cold and lifeless for weeks, was suddenly hot to the touch. When I turned it, steam rose like a kettle boiling, and the smell shifted from sour rot to that deep, earthy scent you only find in the forest after rain. That's when I knew I had stumbled onto something powerful. And the best part, it cost me almost nothing. So, what did I pour? Just 3 ingredients: water, unsulfured molasses, and compost tea. That's it. No expensive inoculants, no fancy activators, no gimmicks. The molasses acted like rocket fuel for the microbes, giving them simple sugars to feed on. The compost tea supplied billions of living organisms ready to multiply, and the water carried everything evenly through the pile. In other words, I gave the biology inside my compost a feast and a workforce at the same time. The transformation was almost unbelievable. Before, scraps like lettuce leaves and melon rinds would sit for weeks, barely changing. After the mixture, those same scraps melted away in just days. The pile shrank fast, breaking down into fine, crumbly matter. Worms migrated to the pile in droves, sensing the microbial activity. And when I pushed my hand into the core, I could barely keep it there. It was that warm. Now here's where it gets really exciting: the results in the garden. Once my compost was finished, I spread it into my tomato bed and around my peppers. Within 2 weeks, the difference was clear. Plants were greener, thicker, and setting more fruit than before. Flowers kept forming, and instead of 1 or 2 peppers per branch, I was getting clusters. The compost had gone from a disappointing waste pile to the most valuable fertilizer I could possibly give my plants. Here's the thing about compost: it's alive. When it's slow, smelly, or compacted, it means the balance is off and the microbes aren't thriving. What my mix did was flip the balance in favor of the good guys. The molasses gave them the energy, the compost tea gave them reinforcements, and the water gave them the mobility to colonize the pile quickly. That's why it seemed like everything suddenly accelerated, because it did. But let me warn you, this isn't about dumping sugar on your compost and hoping for the best. Too much molasses can backfire, creating the wrong kind of bacterial growth. The trick is moderation. Just a couple tablespoons of molasses mixed into a bucket of water with a scoop of compost tea, or even a handful of healthy garden soil if you don't have tea, is enough. Pour it lightly over the pile, give it a turn for airflow, and step back. The microbes will do the rest. It's wild to think about. For years, I struggled with compost that took months, sometimes even a year, to break down. And all along, the solution was to give the biology a jumpstart. Now, instead of waiting forever, I can make usable compost in a fraction of the time. And I've seen firsthand how that rich, living material supercharges my garden soil. I poured 1 bucket of liquid on my pile, and what happened next wasn't magic. It was science. But it felt magical to see waste turn into treasure so fast. And once you try it, you'll never go back to slow composting again. So if your compost has been frustrating, slow, or smelly, give this method a try. Pour on the mix, let the microbes go to work, and watch as your pile transforms. It's one of those tricks that feels like a secret, but really it's just nature doing what it does best when we give it the right conditions. And here's my challenge to you. Try this for yourself, and then tell me what happens in the comments. Every compost pile is different, but I'm willing to bet you'll see the same dramatic change I did. Because once you understand that composting is about feeding life, not just piling scraps, you unlock the real secret to soil health and thriving gardens. So if you're ready to stop babysitting a slow, smelly heap and start making the richest compost you've ever had, this one simple pour might just change everything for you too. So, if you're ready to stop, bury this in your raised bed or garden and attract thousands of worms. If you've ever looked at your soil and thought, why won't anything grow here? The answer almost always comes down to life. Or, well, the lack of it. You know, plants can't thrive in dead dirt. They need living soil full of microbes, fungi, and most importantly, earthworms. Worms are nature's free workforce. They tunnel through the soil, aerating it, breaking down organic matter, and leaving behind nutrient-rich castings that act like supercharged fertilizer. Pretty amazing, right? And the best part? You don't have to spend a fortune to get them. There's one simple thing you can bury in your raised bed or garden, and within days you'll notice worms showing up in droves. So what's the secret? It's not some fancy commercial soil amendment. It's just kitchen scraps and organic matter layered the right way. Simple as that. Think of it like setting a dinner table underground for your worm guests. The trick is to dig a hole about a foot deep and a foot wide in your raised bed or garden. Then, instead of tossing your scraps onto the compost pile or into the trash, you bury them directly in that hole. Easy peasy, right? But here's the key. You don't just throw in anything. Worms have preferences, and if you give them the wrong meal, they won't come near it. Start with fruit and veggie scraps, things like apple cores, banana peels, carrot tops, and melon rinds. These break down quickly and are like candy to worms. Next, add a layer of shredded cardboard or brown paper. Worms love the combination of carbon and nitrogen, and this balance keeps the food from turning slimy or smelly underground. If you really want to kick it up a notch, sprinkle in a small handful of used coffee grounds. Worms can't resist them. It's like putting chocolate sprinkles on a cake. Once your little buffet is set up, cover the whole back with soil and water lightly. Within a few days, worms will start sniffing it out. Yes, they really can detect decaying organic matter from underground. The more consistently you do this, the more worms you'll attract. Before long, your raised bed or garden will turn into a worm hotel, and the soil will transform into dark, crumbly earth that plants absolutely love. Why does this work so well? Because worms are opportunists. In the wild, they gravitate to areas rich in decaying organic matter, fallen leaves, rotting fruit, and dead plants. By burying food scraps in your soil, you're replicating that natural process, only faster. And unlike tossing scraps on the surface, burying them protects against flies, smells, and pests, while keeping the feast right where worms want it, moist and underground. This method has another bonus. It creates pockets of fertility throughout your garden. Every time worms swarm to one of these buried food bombs, they process it and leave behind castings full of bioavailable nutrients. Roots grow into these pockets and feed directly on them. It's like tucking fertilizer capsules into the soil, but 100% natural. Over time, your entire bed becomes a living system that regenerates itself, no store-bought amendments required. Now you might be wondering, what shouldn't you bury? Avoid meat, dairy, oils, and anything heavily processed. Those things attract the wrong kind of critters and take forever to break down. Stick to simple plant-based scraps, shredded paper, and coffee grounds, and you'll be golden. For even better results, rotate your burying spots. One week, dig a hole in one corner of the bed. The next week, pick the opposite corner. That way, worms travel through the whole bed, enriching the soil everywhere they go. Over time, you'll notice your plants growing stronger, your soil holding moisture better, and your raised bed practically wriggling with life every time you dig. This is one of those gardening hacks that feels almost too simple to be true. But it works, and it works fast. When you give worms what they want, they show up in numbers you never imagined. Thousands of worms working around the clock, feeding your soil and supercharging your plants. And the only thing you had to do was bury something you were probably throwing away anyway. So, next time you peel a banana or finish a cup of coffee, don't toss those scraps in the trash. Walk them out to your garden, bury them, and let nature do the rest. In a few weeks, you'll have soil so rich and alive you'll wonder how you ever gardened without this trick.